We like to kick these things off. Holy smokes, we got a bunch of people on the comments and chats already. So, Daniel, while you sort out your mic, I'll go through the comments and see what's going on.
Yeah, let me know. Let me know if it's bad. Otherwise, I just put it back to the way I usually go for.
Yep, no, that sounds pretty clean. Good
Okay.
good morning, everybody. Oh, we got Mike Horton coming in too. Stand by. All right, I got all kinds of new folks here. What's up, Mike?
Hey, just testing it. I'll just join on YouTube Live for now, and then come back on this when you want me. Does that sound good?
Yep, cool. We're here. We're live. We're rocking.
All right.
So, whenever you're ready.
I'll put you on mute for now.
Okay, you're live. You're on the show.
And I'll be on the. All right.
Yep. Dig it. So we got a good show set up for everyone today. Got a bunch of folks coming in that are doing stuff on and with the network, which I thought was pretty important. A lot of the times it's just me and Daniel and Neil and AP who are talking. So I wanted to bring on at least a couple folks who are doing something with the network outside of the tiny little crypto space that we're in. So J619, Falcon Punch, good to see you guys. Network Bits, I see you here. Always stirring up some trouble, so we'll see what you come up with today. And always good to see Lee. Lee had a little disaster this morning when our old dog decided to go after her arm. So yeah, see how she does. And 4 Impact, that's someone new. All right, with all that, let's start off. Thomas, let's tell me kind of what you're doing and yeah, how the whole thing works.
Awesome. Hey, Nick, everybody on here. I appreciate you guys having me. So I am with a company called Lone Star Tracking. We have been a part of the Helium ecosystem for quite some time now.
Yep.
So a couple of years. But we're not new to LoRa. We've been using LoRa way before that. But anyway, fast forward. So our core competency is tracking. That's kind of what we have specialized in. At the beginning, it was vehicles and equipment. It's not just a dot on the map, but we do everything from analyzing driver behavior to route optimization. You know, if you have a fleet of vehicles, how do you get them from point A to point B the most efficiently, get all their deliveries, whatnot. Back in the day, we really didn't have any interest in LoRa or Helium specifically because the coverage wasn't there. What good is a tracking unit if if you can't track it?
Can't track it, yeah.
So yeah, doesn't make any sense. So we focused on cellular and or satellite solutions, but we also are pretty heavy into the agriculture side of things. We do everything from the run-of-the-mill type stuff. So we're monitoring water tanks, water pumps, gates status. If a gate's open and closed, we have our own cattle ear tags. Here's an example of one.
Yeah, look how tiny that thing is.
Yeah. So we got a couple options with this guy here. You can see it's solar powered,
Yep.
but a couple options with it is 26 grams. So it is the lightest tag on the market. We've got satellite backhaul via it. Or satellite connectivity on it. We have cellular connectivity and we have LoRa connectivity. So it's kind of nice when we go out to one of these locations, we can pick and choose what makes most sense. Because LoRa is not for everybody. But fast forward, so that's kind of what we do a lot in the wildlife and animal tracking, everything from lions to alligators to cattle and everything in between. So that's kind of our business in a nutshell. So overall, it is tracking and monitoring either sensor data or physical assets, and we leverage Helium. We light up hotspots every single day. We're deploying sensors every single day that are riding on Helium. But keep note, Helium's not our only solution. We do still leverage these other networks out there, whether it be Senate, whether it be the Things Network, the Things Industries. We run a private network here in the Central Texas area, all backed by ChirpStack. So we've got a couple of options here, depending on the correct use case for that customer.
Yeah, that was something I thought was pretty cool to kind of share with everyone, is that here's a business that isn't solely focused on Helium. So in that sense, from the Helium perspective, you're de-risked, you can use other protocols, but also the idea that as much as we like it, Helium is not the right solution for every task. And seeing kind of the way, Tommy, that you're looking at how to I don't know, solve each different problem is really cool to say, oh, this one gets satellite, this one gets cell, this one gets LoRa. I thought that was pretty rad.
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the other cool things here is, when we go into these remote areas, so again, we're based in Texas, but we operate globally. We're involved in whether it be, agriculture as mentioned, but we do a lot with oil and gas. When you get into West Texas, it is a bunch of nothing out there. There is some cell infrastructure out there, but whether we're trying to acquire SCADA data from a pumping unit that's out there, we've got a new well that's being drilled, and we're recording pressure data. We got to get that data back somehow. So, and we've struggled because we either deploy an infrastructure for, backhauling this the LoRa data, or we'll do a LoRa backhaul. We've done licensed point-to-point before. We've done unlicensed point-to-point. But what we have developed is a satellite backhaul. So we have a gateway now that we provide that has a satellite uplink. There's folks that use I can't think of the name of it. Elon Musk's Starlink.
Yeah.
Yep,
AP's going to talk about that in a second. We're getting
awesome.
to it. Yeah.
So we chose not to go with it because of the power requirements. So we're in the middle of nowhere most of the time, and that's just a very high bandwidth, high power consumption solution. So we have a low-powered solution that we leverage. We can't get real-time data out, but we do have a satellite flyby every hour or so, at which time we uplink all of our data, and then it comes through to the end user, or however that might be. But so that gives us global coverage. So now we can have tracking device, for example, a tracking device that is configured to operate on the Helium network, and if we have no Helium coverage, we can roam onto one of our gateways that are deployed out there with the satellite backhaul, get the data up. So we've got great coverage. It works very well for us.
Awesome. Daniel, AP, what are you guys thinking?
Well, I was just thinking, I totally agree with the power requirements for the Starlink. It's insane. I think 200, 300 watts is quite a bit, having it on 24/7. But from the speed test I've done, it should be good enough for 5G backhaul in the States, based on the speed test data I've done in the UK. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's
slick
super cool. Yeah. You mentioned that you were deploying a lot of data only hotspots. Would you be willing, instead of you paying, even though a data only is quite cheap, would you be willing that people just throw hotspots your way to deploy them? Because I think there's a lot of red. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting you mentioned that. In the past couple of days, so nothing against Helium and the way that the system stands right now, but as a business, it has been a bit of a struggle for us. We don't mind spending the money on the data only hotspot. That's fine. But it gets down to, as a business, how do we purchase the HNT? Use Binance or something like that. But Binance, for example, is blocked in Texas. So we're trying to do all this legally by the books, whether it be tax related. So we've hit a brick wall on obtaining HNT as a business. We're open ears if anybody has a solution. But so what we started looking at, and when we look on all these social media posts, we're seeing people that are saying, look, I'm unplugging this hotspot. It's not making me any money. I was expecting to make $1,000 a day. I'm not. I'm throwing it away. So and now this is a little bit on the premature side here. We haven't released this yet, but we are deploying and selling sensors every single day. We're shipping units, and these are generally shipped with a data-only hotspot. If you, the end user, have a hotspot that you're not using, perhaps we can link, we can form that bridge. You guys can send us a hotspot. We would send it out with this package going to XYZ company. So it would provide some type of placement that would alleviate our pain point of trying to figure out how to buy the HNT to onboard these gateways. And if you have a bunch of them sitting around in your closet, let's put them to use. I know there's a lot of frustration out there. We see it all the time, but believe it or not, IoT is still in its infancy. We're going to see nothing but an increase in the number of sensors that are out there. And how do you get that data? Whether it's going to be LoRa, whether it's Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, LoRa rocks. It's an awesome technology, and finally getting to the point now where we have enough of an infrastructure that we can deploy this. For example, there's other companies out there, but we do temperature sensors as well. So we try and tackle a lot of school districts, hotels, gas stations, stuff like that. But it's nice now because we don't even have to sell them a gateway or provide a gateway. We can take a look at the map. Looks like you guys have coverage. Jump on board. We'll charge you a flat yearly rate for the sensor itself, and you get to eliminate the gateway there. So similarly with tracking, so we're still at the infancy here, and it's great seeing this network grow. So, and the roaming providers as well, being able to roam onto these other infrastructures that are out there.
Yeah, this is super exciting. No, because if it was me, like I don't have any hotspot in the US, but if it was me, just to get one hotspot sent to you, just tell me where to reassert that hotspot is yours. Take it, Like if I can make a
Yeah,
little bit of money
I
on data
actually,
credits.
I've got. Let me drop a link in the comments. There's a dude who reached out to me, Future Networks, and they're doing Daniel something like this, where I think they've contacted a bunch of ham radio folks, and they're like, hey, they've got some scheme where you send them your hotspot, they send it on to the right ham radio tower, because all these ham guys, like they've beat us to this tower thing by 30 years.
Yeah.
And they'll put it up on their tower, and because they're ham guys, like LMR 400 is not new to them. And then they get I think Future Networks get a split, you get a split as a hotspot owner, and the ham guys get a split. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that stuff, whether it's on just what would that be, disaggregation side, or it's the side with folks
Relocation.
like Thomas.
Yeah, exactly. Leo from Future
Leo.
Networks,
Yep.
great guy. Yeah, exactly. We spoke on the Helium House. I think he has mainly locations in the UK and Germany, if I remember correctly.
Hopefully he's
But
going to have some in
this
the US
idea,
now.
yeah, this happening
Yeah.
everywhere. Like a lot of people are looking for this kind of services, and they like most capitals, they're like oversaturated. Might as
Yeah.
well just come back. I would rather get like less rewards than get nothing, because my hotspot in a very saturated location, and then still helping the network, right, grow. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm like you said, I'm super happy to see this kind of service happen and just grow.
Agreed.
Yeah. Super.
You
super
can
cool stuff.
guarantee nearly like in any UK city or any UK city or town, there is coverage nearly. Like I haven't found one. Even the smallest ones have got hotspots in at the moment, so, which is great to see, because like you say, you don't need to worry about having one deployed for you. But obviously, if you're in the middle of Texas, of course, you might need one.
Texas is big. It's hard to wrap your head around how fucking big that place is.
It is lots of opportunities, but a lot of different ones. A lot of folks, when we started doing this, everybody's deploying in cities and towns, and that was never our focus. Our focus has always been rural and remote. I'm a ham myself, and so that was the first place that we looked into, was tying in with the ham communities and the wireless ISPs. Both
Yep.
of them have the infrastructures, so it's simple. So get your equipment up there.
Yeah. No, pretty cool thing. I think the other thing, Thomas, that's super cool is that you and I have worked together on the paraglider tracking project. I think this time last year. I think the race is actually going on again, and seeing just like how much. What do the cool guys say? Like how much you've abstracted away all the technology. Like I just logged into your website, to the Lone Star site, and I was able to see where every paraglider was in real time. You had a guy come up to the race. I mean, him and his wife came up with a trailer. They had like screens. People were watching where folks were. Like you've made it. You made LoRa and probably tracking as a bigger picture like really easy for the general public.
Yeah, we've tried to. LoRa is such a foreign term, and for the general population. The thing about us, there's plenty of tracking solutions out there. Anybody can go create a tracking company right now. There's nothing special about us, but the software is key, and there may be systems that are easier that are out there than ours. We designed ours where we can focus and we can tailor to the companies. Like I say, route optimization, maintenance, just it goes on and on as far as the features that we have built in with our software. But we also have a light version, which you're using today, Nick, and it's just a cut and dry. Here's where my equipment is in real time. Here's where it was. So, and it's great. Theft drives me up the wall, and I speak with people every single day. And it's finally good to see that we have an infrastructure where if somebody steals your trailer, we're going to be tracking it. Somebody's going to be tracking it, even if you're using Helium Cargo, which is a free solution for you guys. There's plenty of open source packages that are out there if you want to fire up your own tracking solution.
Yeah.
So you've got options, and no matter what, somebody is going to cross into an area eventually that has a Helium hotspot, and you're going to pick up a signal from that device.
Yeah, I'm seeing a ton of questions in the chat. So let's see. One of the questions is super straightforward business stuff. Is how are you pricing it, and whether or not you give the actual pricing? Like when you go to a rancher, is it per cow, per acre, per? How do you kind of sell that to them?
So it really varies. If we're talking about a rancher or something like that, we got these ear tags that I mentioned. Depending on what type of if we're doing LoRa, if we're doing cellular or satellite, each one has its own different pricing model because we pay per message via satellite. Cellular, everybody's familiar with. We use CAT-M1 here. We will perhaps start opening up to some of the NB-IoT stuff, but that'll be in the future. And then the LoRa side of things. Well, one of the biggest things that we've found with dealing with ranchers, so I raise cattle as well, and your margins are extremely small. So if you go up to a rancher and you say, hey, give me $5 per month per animal or something like that, they're going to look at you like you're absolutely crazy. So we've tried to gear these things where it is affordable. Affordable, but B, it's all tied into one package. So a rancher can now log into our software, and not only can they monitor every single water tank out there, they can see the water pumps and how those pumps are operating. They can see if every gate is open or closed on their property. They know if cattle have entered or exited, where all these cattle are. We do grazing patterns, so you can see we do breeding or we try to determine if the animal has bred or not based on the location and the activity of the bull. But we've got that. We try to do based on some AI and ML techniques that we're using, determine the health of these animals. So we've got a lot that's packed into this piece of software. But back to your original point here, price, you would expect something like this to be very expensive, but it will not work in that market if you put a high price tag on it. So it is a very affordable system. It does vary anywhere from, say, $1 a month up to a couple of dollars, depending on what we're dealing with
Device
here
and what they're doing. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. So it ranges.
It's super cool. So AP, I'm going to hit you in a second on this anti-gaming because I saw it just came up in the chat. But Daniel, you're building out Hotspot, and you started off with hotspots and coming from this hacker background, and you've had to grow the company probably a lot faster than you wanted to. You're seeing all this stuff. Like what is this sparking in you as far as ideas for what you can do on your end with maybe just in the Helium network, maybe beyond?
Yeah, I mean, just on the IoT side of things, we definitely are looking to how can we help now in the sensor side of things. Like we spoke last week, maybe start like a console or something. Yeah, let's see. I'm very excited about IoT. Like we always speak. I think in the DY right now, whatever is more, let's say, hype is the 5G. But on the long run, I personally am super excited about IoT coming from my, like Nick said, the hacker background, just getting things together. I want to put everything with Helium IoT in my new house, for example, and just keep on building on that because I really believe in this and it's a long-term game. I think this. Yeah. I'm really excited for hearing Thomas talk about all these projects because, like you said, it's just we're so early in this IoT. Like LoRa is such a new technology, and then the next 3-5 years is going to be super exciting with all this coverage out there and a cheap price, right?
Yeah. Thomas will come back to you. I think that's a super good start. But AP, we were going to have Star Watcher on. He's got a Canadian holiday, so he's not coming on to talk about this anti-gaming thing. But the word on the street is that you know a little bit about it. Tell me what's going on.
Yeah. So Star Watch has done a lot of work in building a machine learning model to recognize gaming hotspots. So obviously we see quite a lot of clusters just dotted around in various towns and cities that are quite obviously not connected to the or not even providing coverage. So StarWatch has created an ML model and basically has fed it bad hotspots or known bad hotspots and trusted good hotspots. So you kind of have to tell it what's good, what's bad, and kind of keep feeding that data into it. And it's, I got the technical name. If anyone really wants to look at it, from what I know, it's a supervised linear regression model.
Very fancy.
Quite fancy, yeah. And there's quite a lot of if you just look at machine learning models, there's a quick 5-minute video on YouTube, and you can kind of understand it a lot better than I can probably explain it in a short period of time. But at the moment, with 99.9% confidence, that's the confidence level of the kind of known gaming hotspots. That's what's gone into a GitHub issue at the moment, into the deny list repo, and that's now in a open PR. So 6,600 have gone in for the first wave. But from what I understand is that the amount of data that was used against that was quite a long period, I think 4 weeks worth of data on every hotspot to build up that kind of confidence. And in the future, from what I understand, when POCs are a lot more frequent, we might be able to kind of catch those in 1 or 2 days rather than 4 weeks, and kind of speed that process up as well.
Very cool. Huh. It brings up all kinds of questions, like how do you, I'm sure they've sorted this out. How do you know who's good, who's bad, who's trusted, who's not? But it's interesting to think how, I wonder if companies like Thomas's, if he's deploying Helium hotspots, let's say pretty likely you can trust that he's putting them where he says he's putting them, and start to leverage hey, we can get way more known, trusted hotspots. But what I found when I brainstormed this shit is that these people know way more than I do.
There's a bit of brainstorming yesterday in the proof of coverage security working group, and we were brainstorming kind of if you've seen the SX1303s, which is a LoRa concentrator. Yep. They do fine-tuned timestamping, and if you have a number of those in a city, you can kind of triangulate also the ones that are not using SX1303, so you can kind of imply that they're actually there or not in a way using that kind of data as well. Yeah. So it's all discussion at the moment, but I'm sure there's going to be a few trials, maybe some grants from the foundation to look into how feasible it is.
Yeah. Stomp those gamers out. They've had their run, but it may be time to drop them down.
100%.
I'm not sure what I did with the background there, but I did something, so we got that. It's always little minor disasters throughout this thing. What was I seeing in the chat? I saw Bobby came up with something, and it was, I meant to call this out last time, is that we've all wondered who Bobby / Chad Dawson / what was the other one is. And then we got to meet him at Helium House. Super nice guy. I want to say a teacher. Was it Jersey or something? But yeah, I got to chat with him. Super cool guy. But he had this idea that every hotspot should be forced to buy a sensor. So I think all of us would be way ahead of that. I don't know. That seems like there's probably some disaster in that plan. What are you guys thinking?
It would be good, I guess. Sorry, for distributors, if they're selling hotspots, maybe they could sell or give away something for free alongside the hotspot. Like a tracker or something, at least that gets more people using it at the same time.
What are you thinking, Daniel?
Yeah. No, yeah. I think the problem is if you want to deploy something super far away for people doing wolf tracking, and then you don't have anything for a month or two, and then that hotspot get in the deny list, and then they're wolf tracking. But I mean, I guess that if the hotspot on the deny list can still do data transfer, then it's fine, right? Because in the end of the game, POC should be very minimal, and then all the hotspots are going to be doing data transfer. Then the game is not an issue anymore.
Right.
I agree 100%.
On the other,
go ahead, AP.
Sorry, you go. Oh yeah. So as well as the end game is to not have the deny list. So the kind of at the moment is the only tool and mechanism we've got to kind of prevent gaming. If we can implement some kind of ML logic, Starwatch was created, but that is real time. So you're performing normally over a 2-day period, you'll be out of any kind of restriction, or so kind of setting a score on that, maybe.
Yep.
And it's all discussion, but it's definitely the future of where I can see it going. Yeah.
Just a quick update here. I just updated the deny list on Hotspotty. We are at 88,627 hotspots in the deny list.
All right, so
So
just
around
under 10%.
like 9%. Yeah.
Huh. Very cool. Actually, Thomas, I want to come back to you. There's a thing in the chat where, was it Surgis? It said something about ham guys don't want miners on their towers. I have not found that. I've talked to a couple ham guys who put miners on their towers, but here it is. Ham guys are aware about noise coming from poor manufactured devices like miners, which are very noisy on HF bands and ETH connections, CPU, I/O. So no one wants something like this on their tower. I don't think that's correct, but yeah. What do you think?
Depending on the bands that you're operating, he specifically pointed out HF, it is very sensitive to noise. So, and then falling back and looking at how some of these devices are manufactured, I mean, from back in the day when we're using a Raspberry Pi, they are very noisy, RF noisy devices.
Yep.
So it is a possibility. I suppose, depending on the equipment. I myself, as mentioned, I have a UHF, VHF, and HF antennas here, and I've got gear out here. Will I power it down? Absolutely. Will others? I don't know. So I think it's definitely a personal preference, but there is merit in that comment there.
I stand.
That could be a great test. Imagine someone that gets all the one of each hotspot manufacturer and do like a RF like noise.
Oh, see which is the noisiest. Oh, that'd be so good for Germ. He'd crush that. Ultra RF geek. It's so rad to see that guy work. Okay, and then Falcon Punch had asked a while ago, Thomas, how are you going to switch? How are you going to tackle the switch over to ChirpStack with so many sensors in the field? So I think you guys are already on ChirpStack, but can you walk me through how someone with 1,000 sensors in the field is going to do, I guess, switch in LNS, right?
Yeah. That's a great question. So most of the devices that you're going to be dealing with out there are going to have one or two features. You're either going to be able to queue up and send a downlink to the device to get it to reboot, essentially. So what we did when we ended up doing some migrations, we had a script that we essentially put together. So the device was I'm trying to remember exactly how we executed this, but we queued up the downlinks to reboot the device. Upon reboot, we ended up taking it off of the initial network server, LNS, that we were on, and then we ended up having it active on the new LNS. So when it came back on and did its join attempt, that's where we picked it up on the new server. A lot of devices will also have some type of a timeout or a retry capability. I know there's a proper term for it, not sure what it is, but after, say, a 1 week period, if it can't communicate with the LNS that it's already provisioned on, then it's going to do a new join attempt, and at which time the new LNS will pick up. No matter what, this migration is not easy. It's not fun. As a business, I pray that the Helium infrastructure does not change. I mean, I'm looking forward to the changes on the blockchain and whatnot, but any other migrations in the future that we might have to deal with are not going to be pretty. And from a business standpoint, does it make sense for us if we're going to be looking at doing another one of these large migrations? That can be a large negative, So there's a few things on the business side that we're still trying to work through, and we talk to Helium all the time about what works for us, what doesn't work for us, where are the problems that we're running into. Just simply onboarding, hundreds of devices at one time can be very frustrating. So there's a lot to be learned. Us as a business, and this is kind of jumping a little bit, but we have always followed the European and the overseas markets. They're, in my opinion, when it comes to LoRa, and telematics, they're further ahead than we are here in the U.S. So watching what they do, and watching and being involved with TTN and TTI, we're seeing some of the best practices. We implement them and we use them here, and I hope to see Helium continue to innovate and adapt and I know the majority of the people out here and on the call are probably focused on, the earnings and the proof of coverage and stuff like that. But from us as a business deploying these sensors, personally, we don't have much interest in that. We need to figure out how we can quickly, easily get this equipment out there, get these hotspots out there, get these sensors onboarded without it taking time, hours
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
do
and
this.
this is the whole reason of Helium, right? Try to make it easy. Like that's the only way I think the network is gonna succeed if these things get easy.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yep.
I'm gonna jump off to give some screen space for you
Sure.
guys.
Yeah.
Rock on.
Yeah, you can stick on. You can do whatever you want. But let's see. We got Mike Horton on now. Mike is coming from Geonet, and Mike, you're also in Texas, right? At least right now.
I'm in rural Texas, Oatmeal, Texas, which is outside of Burnett.
Okay. I'm gonna switch some
Right down
screens
the road there, Mike.
It's gonna take a second here.
Is that right? Where are you at?
Blanco.
Blanco. All right.
Yep, just up 281.
Yeah. So out here, I'm doing a test for Geonet to install a station with Starlink. So Geonet is a geospatial network providing GNSS corrections to improve the accuracy and security of GPS location. And a lot of the places that we need to deploy stations are out really remote and have no internet. So I wanted to set up a station with Starlink to see how it performs. We need real-time connectivity 24/7. And so trying to understand, if that works well. And I've been really pleasantly surprised with how easy it was to set up. And we're uploading data live now from Geonet through Starlink, and it's been working really good so far. And on the power, I'm thinking about doing solar in some of these remote islands as well. I'm seeing about 120 watts. I got a power meter on there, so it's not. I haven't seen 300 watts yet. I'd be curious on the folks from Europe if they're typically seeing 300 watts. That's something. If there's a location power variation, that's really interesting.
I think if it's the square dishy or the square model, they've got, I think there's different power requirements for each one. I've got the round one, and the circular one also, I think the square one does as well, has a heater in it. So when the temperature gets really low, it warms up the heater to melt the snow, and then it uses more power.
Gotcha.
Then initially that heater was on 24/7, but now they've got a function in the app to put it on automatic or off. So it depends how cold it is as well.
Yeah. I got the square one. So you think in the winter it might jump up higher? Interesting.
Yeah, if you get down to 0, it'll probably or 0, it'll probably get a turn on the heating. So
Yeah, Tommy, are you running Starlink or not at all?
No.
Okay, not yet.
No, we have no Starlink where we deploy. It'll be cellular or a lower payload size satellite backhaul.
Got it.
what I did as well for the Starlink is initially I was a bit worried about, because it was very beta when I started about a year ago. I put in a failover like mechanism, so if the Starlink goes down for a period of time, it will fail over to 4G. Don't have 5G yet here, but it's kind of like a different way of data for my Helium hotspot.
Yeah. Mike, so this is the first one that you've put on Starlink, and we've talked a little bit about Geonet, I think, before you were here on other shows. But this is where you think it'll go for all of these remote deployments that you're going to do. Is that right?
I think certainly really off-grid, small islands. I've got for example, we have a station in Tahiti as one of our backbone stations for kind of global orbit and satellite time computation. You need to have stations evenly spaced across the surface of the Earth. And the host in Tahiti has a brother who lives on the island of Rodriguez. And Rodriguez is about 300, 400 kilometers off of Tahiti. And that place they only had about 6 hours a day. So we need 24/7, upload. It's not a high bandwidth upload, but a couple of kilobits a second upload continuous with really no gaps. And so for something like that, I think the Starlink really offers a great solution. as well as places like the Aleutian Islands, Fiji, Ring of Fire. These places that are off grid, I think, are really well served by that. And then I think here in Oatmill, Texas, I think there is that great. So I think Starlink for the rural communities here would be actually quite an upgrade. I could see people, setting one up in a couple homes that are nearby each other, sharing the data on it, because I do think the speed is higher than what you can get with a service plan out here in this location anyway.
That's pretty rad. I mean, we're really seeing the development, and I think this is the interesting part of we've got kind of three guys who are pretty technologically competent in the call, and then me. And I think we're seeing stuff that you guys have kind of known about for a long time with this idea that, hey, you can get this satellite backhaul, or you can do this special backhaul, or this fancy thing, or CADM, or whatever it is. And that ability to start tying into those different protocols is beginning, in at least for me, in large part through Helium, to kind of bubble to the surface in a much bigger market and say, hey, there are a bunch of different protocols you can use to do a bunch of different things. It's pretty cool to think about. When we started State of the Network, it was, kind of Helium only people on this. And now we've got two separate businesses who have certainly heard of Helium and may, I think, Mike, you guys might use Helium in the future, but you're not a Helium focused business. Yeah, it may take a second for all that to come through. What's going on in the chat here? Network bits stirring up trouble, the usual stuff. And then I'm seeing one Ali Kassar, is Geonet worth to buy and mine it? Yeah, so I don't know that we covered what Geonet totally is in depth, but Thomas and I were talking before Mike got on, and he's doing the same kind of thing, this RTK piece, but you just put a miner on your house and it improves GPS accuracy within 20 or 40 miles, something like that, around wherever you put the miner in, and you get paid in tokens. A pretty standard play for this new blockchain and meat space type thing. Really cool to see that it's coming up, and it's not just in the domain of ultra tech experts.
Yeah, quick comment here on that. So I don't know if Mike's catching any of this. So I'm new to Mike's company here, so I'm definitely going to dive in. But we have applications on the tracking side, specifically in some refineries, where they require ultra high precision tracking, centimeter level. One of the spots that we have struggled is finding this correction data. So there's correction data services out there, but there's no telling how far away the nearest base station is going to be, depending on where we're deploying. So seeing these, and for those of you that are not familiar with this technology, you got your conventional GPS, you've got different bands, different types of antennas. Say you got plus or minus 1 meter accuracy, and it varies. But there's another technology out there called RTK, and the catch is you need this correction data. You need what's called a base station to obtain and calculate this correction data, and then it gets pushed out to your GPS tracker, we'll call it. Some calculations
rover,
done.
Right?
Yep, bingo. Yep. So base station and your rover, but so we struggle. So what we end up doing is we have to go out and deploy our own base station at these customers. I would love it if we had the ability of tying into a subscription service. Now there are subscription services out there that we can access this correction data, but again, it falls back how far away is one of these base stations. So back to the person in the chat, their question is it worth it or not? I don't know, but I can tell you from our business standpoint, accessing that correction data that I'm assuming Mike's company will be providing here is going to be awesome. We love hearing that, and that's awesome for us because now we don't have that additional cost of deploying and maintaining a base station there at our customer's location.
And Thomas, if you do have base stations there and you want to switch them out for a miner and earn tokens, we'd be happy to do that. I think the 2 points that we would want to emphasize is the accessibility of RTK correction data on a global basis is very poor. You at least have a choice here in the US that there are some networks available, but as you said, the accuracy you get with those, your mileage will vary because the density of deployment is not really that high, even on the commercial networks. And then the subscription prices are just out of this world. I mean, for a Trimble VRS Now solution, which is their best accuracy product, you're looking at $3,000-4,000 per device per year. So it's quite expensive, and if you have multiple field workers in the refinery that want to have that survey accuracy capability, it adds up really fast.
Agreed.
So it's been limited, to the high end, but the market is really turning the corner to bring this high precision location and high integrity location into a lot of applications, because the hardware costs have really fallen. Some of these high end receivers have now even made their way into Android cell phones. So a number of the Google Pixel, Xiaomi, Huawei, a number of the Samsung phones all have dual band RTK capable receivers in them. So the market's changing, and we think the need for ubiquitous correction data is there. And we're at Geonet sort of balancing a focus on near-term opportunities for data revenue in the US and the EU, where we have a lot of deployments quickly and things are ramping up. But we also have a big focus on Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, where really access to geospatial data is extremely limited, really limited to government only. And in those places, if we can establish Geonet quickly, we think we will be the network for a long time to come there. We can really have a first mover advantage because there isn't any good infrastructure in those places. And so that's kind of where the whole Starlink ties in. We've got to get infrastructure deployed, in a pretty geographically even way across these countries.
I agree with you 100% there, Mike.
Take it. I'm seeing the chat blow up with a side convo about this bullshit IoT 5 thing. But I did see some cool stuff about people asking, and since we got you on here, Mike, is Geonet recently started or kind of piloted this project to trade out, was it rack V2s for a Geonet station depending on your location? And I'm seeing questions, are you guys going to do that with any other brand, or is it only going to be with racks? Like, what's the kind of future of that program?
Yeah, we're evaluating it. We're seeing how it's going, and I think it's off to a good start. And we may very well do more versions of miners. We have some interest certainly in getting some in with PoE, for example, would be something that we'd be looking to potentially expand the program to. But we want to start with small steps, make sure that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot and get set expectations too high and then fail to deliver. So far, what we're seeing is really good interest in that program, and we're going to reuse those miners. And we love Helium, so I think there's been some consternation that we're not supportive of Helium. We're super supportive of Helium. I think for things like the animal tracking, all kinds of IoT applications, I totally agree with the idea that everybody should have an IoT sensor when they get a hotspot miner to just understand what this technology can do, which is a lot of things. But in places where it's over deployed, it makes sense to have an alternative, and we don't want to rebuild hardware for the sake of rebuilding hardware. I mean, a lot of the V2 rack miners is a very simple, well understood piece of hardware with the Raspberry Pi and a nice enclosure. We can repurpose that and redeploy that potentially for both Helium and Geonet, or maybe initially just Geonet as we come up the learning curve to a region where there really is a need for coverage, and help that miner get whole and reduce the sort of overpopulation problem in certain areas. So we're really looking at it as a just efficient way to utilize the resource that's already been consumed in the fabrication of that hardware and put that miner to good use through the swap program.
Yeah. Super cool stuff. AP, did you have something?
With with the RTK data, does that, I hope I got that acronym right. Does that allow you to use sensors indoors as well, or do you still need the satellite connection?
So the RTK accuracy and indirectly can help with indoor accuracy, but not primarily. Primarily, it's really for outdoor use, such as like a robo lawnmower is a classic application, and those are becoming consumer products that are core users of RTK. Another one that's familiar to people are these drone light shows. Those are all based on RTK positioning. When you go indoors, the GPS signal quality degrades so badly that trying to add RTK corrections to it doesn't really help. But if you have a great outdoor accuracy and then you transition indoors and you use things like gyros and inertial navigation, then it can improve your indoor location and could be tied into alternative augmentation systems indoors, like a UWB-based tracking and things like that. So I think there's probably a future there as well in adding that to some of these hotspots for indoor location. But there are a lot of, there's certainly more challenging privacy things through on that and so forth. So we're right now focused on this large scale geospatial problem, which I think has significant challenges in the legacy market with the price and accessibility that sort of Thomas highlighted, and then a lot of emerging demand for new applications, whether it's a robo lawnmower, a drone, or future autonomous cars, all the way down to just simply better driving directions on your mobile phone. I mean, you can improve your accuracy on a simple mobile phone as well. So a lot of different places where this data could be used, and I think the first step is to get fully modernized, good quality infrastructure evenly spaced across the globe. And that's back where that recycling program comes in, as we can take those into places where we can help sponsor deployments for and get deployments in developing world countries.
Dig it. Mike, one more question for you. Go ahead, Thomas.
I was just say, AP, you asked about going indoors here. We ran into that same problem. So what we ended up leveraging was a technique called sensor fusion, where we have the RTK corrections when we're outdoors or when the personnel is outdoors. When they move inside, we can maintain a higher level of positioning accuracy just based on GPS by using sensor fusion to combine the gyro data, the accelerometer data, the magnetometer data, all into one, pass it through what's called a Kalman filter, and then we have an answer. The problem is it's drift. It'll drift over time. So that user, that rover, needs to get back outside immediately or quickly. But we can maintain high precision for a short amount of time.
For like high precision indoor stuff at the moment, like ultra wideband, I guess, is like the preferred kind of technology to.
Yeah, you're going to have to migrate over off of something that's satellite based, which now you've lost connectivity to something like ultra wideband, BLE, some other technology that's out there and designed for the indoor infrastructure.
Ultra wideband's a good choice. Another one, if you have a mobile phone operator, you can use the camera and do visual SLAM. That certainly is it's a complicated solution, but it's a powerful technology. Even things like we've seen customers that are doing this indoor-outdoor transition problem that Thomas describes, with like sort of automated forklifts and things, go to even simpler, solutions like QR codes indoors, and then they're actually localizing off those. I mean, doing 3D localization off of, reading QR codes and stuff like that. So the indoor problem is definitely is a big challenge. It's a big challenge, but you do, as Thomas said, you get off to a good start by having a good initial location from your outdoor positioning.
Agreed.
My current workplace, they track every single asset in a factory floor. So every tool on the factory floor, and I believe they're using ultra wideband, and I'm not 100%, but I think that's what they're using currently. And you can see who's got the object as well as where the object is on this humongous scale factory floor. It's pretty insane, but
it's pretty rad to see this stuff. See people cool. Using it. Mike, a question back in the chat from Russ Thomas. Are there any GPS receivers now using Geonet? So I think you guys are a pretty new company. I think you already have at least one customer. Is that right?
Yeah. So we have two customers that are actively using Geonet. One is the Hemisphere, which is using it for high-end applications in agriculture and construction. And the data from these stations, particularly these global stations, is fed into a model they have for orbit clock and ionospheric space weather determination, and then fed back down. They actually have an L-band channel, which is super, super cool. That is, their L-band channel is completely separate from Geonet, but they're able to take the Geonet data and rebroadcast that after it's been processed back down on L-band, which means the GPS receiver itself acts as the receiver. So they don't need a external radio link to receive the corrections. They're able to do that through directly through the GPS receiver. And then another module maker we're working with a lot is Quectel. And Quectel has very low cost dual band GNSS modules that you can embed into different IoT gear, anything from e-mobility through small robots, drones, and stuff that can then leverage the Geonet RTK network. And I think there'll be a number of new, product announcements coming out over the next 6 months that really show Geonet in action. Fundamentally, RTK data follows a standard, by the way, called intrip. So as we make the data accessible to end user customers, not just through sort of bulk wholesale applications like the Hemisphere application, where we let people log in and just directly use intrip data. And because intrip's a standard, you don't really need much else. If your GPS receiver supports the intrip protocol for RTK, then you could just connect directly to Geonet and use the data.
Pretty rad. We end up getting super technical on some of these calls, which is, I think it's really important for folks to see that this is rapidly moving beyond just kind of Helium enthusiasts and into the rest of the world. AP, I know you got to bail. Drop out anytime. I think we might get Dave.
Nice seeing y'all.
Yeah, right on, dog.
Take care, man.
We might get Dave at Helium Analytics to jump in. Let's see. I'm seeing questions in the chat about WeatherXM stuff. We'll see if we can get those guys on to talk about it, but also to know that I'm pretty sure Cedar SenseCap has a device you can use. I've got some kind of Gristle King stuff announcements, but before I get to those, Thomas or Mike, is there anything else that you guys want folks to know about what you're doing, or maybe they make an entrance into using you guys as a customer, or anything at all before we switch over to GK?
Real quick, wanted to mention, I saw someone in the chat here, Max, asking about the weather equipment. Take a look. There's a company out there called Dragino. They're based in China. They make some basic sensors, but they have a weather station that we've tested. If you want to grab that and play with it, that you don't have to run that through Helium. It doesn't have to be tied into crypto. You can decode the packets yourself, set up all your own equipment, and it'll be isolated. So no data ever needs to leave your physical location if you want to check something like that out.
Dig it. Yeah, we'll see if we can get someone to drop a link there. Mike, what was the other thing? We had just seen, I don't know if you're totally ready to talk about this, but you had dropped a link about the visualization of satellites into a chat we're in, and that was the coolest thing for me to see. I don't know when that's going to go public with Geonet, but it was rad to see the different distances and different densities of kind of satellite deployments.
I thought that was an amazing visualization tool. So I'm pushing our team to figure out how to get that into our console, because I love the 3D. Since we're a global project, flat maps don't do justice. The hex sizes don't work if you're zoomed out too far. And it's really also cool to be able to see the connectivity to what satellites are being tracked. But it might be a little bit of time, but that's certainly something that I think, being able to see these things really in action is important to just education, and also the enjoyment factor of doing these projects is partly the rewards from crypto, but it's also partly realizing that you're part of a network, you're part of a high-tech solution that in the past, and at least in our field, was predominantly done by governments and very few large companies that are not able to really communicate well with the mainstream market. So to be able to put up hardware and install it, it's very rewarding. We set this up. I try to show, but using the mobile phone here is a little jaggy, but just getting the Starlink and the Geonet set up was really a lot of fun. I mean, just seeing that you can bring these high-tech things together and all of a sudden be doing something that just a few years ago only a government would consider trying to pull off, and you're pulling it off with equipment basically bought at retail, right? That's an amazing step.
Yeah. No, it's the coolest. What do you got, Thomas?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree with you, Mike. We didn't get into the RTK domain until about last year, and we use a receiver or a chipset from uBlocks, and it's been affordable. It's finally something that we can deploy in our products and our hardware that is within the average person's budget now. I don't see RTK going anywhere. I see nothing but it being more widely deployed. And the biggest gap that we have run into, there was two. One was the hardware or the chipsets that we're going to be using, which are
Mhm.
now becoming more available. But two is these base stations, and it was really cool. You mentioned that other company that's figured out how to pass a correction data over GPS. For anybody else that's interested, normally you have your base station that's generating this correction data. But you got to get that data from the base station over to your rover or over to the device that needs that that needs the correction data. So you've got two wireless links, that you're dealing with. You got GPS data coming in, one way, and you got correction data coming in another way. So it can get tough, especially if you're in, like for us, in these refineries where RF is not friendly. It's very difficult. So looking forward to it, Mike.
Sounds good. And if you want to chat more about RTK offline, I'd love to support you. U-Box is a great product. I use it in another a product that I work on, and from Anello Photonics. We use that chipset as well as some others. So I'm super up on them. But there are some lower cost ones. I would think for your application, getting down to the lowest possible cost for the tag or tracker would be critical. And U-Box is a great option, but the market is moving very quickly, and because some of these chipsets now are actually used in mass market cell phones, you can go down in price substantially, down in both price and power consumption substantially from the U-Box. So some of these dual band chipsets that we're working with on Quectel are down at 100 milliwatts active power consumption, and probably would offer you quite a substantial cost reduction as well.
Agreed.
Or would certainly offer you a big cost reduction.
Awesome. Yeah,
And I'm
RTK
happy
is here to
connect you
stay.
guys. Yeah.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, I'll definitely connect you guys. Cool. Well, that is most of the show. I'm seeing, Mike, you're getting a ton of questions in the chat about all this geeky GPS, whatever stuff. And then Russ is asking about details on Rack V2. So I'll push you, if you're watching, to do a couple things. One is join the Geonet Discord server. They do weekly AMAs and FAQ stuff that are really helpful, and they get as technical as you want to get in there. And then the other thing is to check out Lone Star Tracking, which is Thomas's company, and just see what they're doing, whether you are using them or not using them or have questions. I think having these resources here and open to kind of talking to the general public with kind of the soft GK intro is a pretty cool thing to be able to do. Let's see. I had a guy reach out this week with an idea, and I said, "Hey, do you mind if I just share this out to the world and we'll let someone work on it?" And he said, "Yeah." So the idea is there is a problem with catalytic converters getting stolen. Apparently the things get super hot, and so if someone comes up with a tracker that can handle the heat of a catalytic converter, you'd have a business pretty quickly. And when I brought it up in our little state of the network chat in Discord, a little private chat, Joey was like, "I'm missing a catalytic converter. I could totally use something like this." So
Yeah.
anyone out there that's got this idea and you want to work on it, and if I can help you or push it out or whatever, I think that's a pretty cool idea. Was the first thing. And then the second thing is that Gristle King is starting to launch, myself and Max Gold over at People Antenna are launching an Industry Insiders newsletter. It's not for folks who are kind of doing the small stuff, the maker stuff, but what I've been seeing after coming back from Helium House and talking at the Tippin Summit and talking to kind of everybody in the space, as you can see, Thomas and Mike and the folks at Bobcat and everywhere else, is that this is a really difficult space to keep track of everything. You may be tuning into this show and this is the first time you've heard of Geonet, or first time you've seen Lone Star, or first time you've seen X, Y, and Z. And what Max and I are finding is that between the two of us, we seem to be connected to kind of everyone in the space. And so we're going to start putting out this weekly newsletter that is for industry insiders. So if you're running a manufacturer, if you're a VC, one of the things we got a ton of questions about is people walk up to you or VCs and be like, before they ask your name, they'll say, "What new projects do you know about that are awesome?" And so I was like, "Oh, we'll check out Geonet." But it's one of those things that is built for those guys. So you'll see that starting to pop up in the GK kind of social media in general. And I think that is most of the show. Do you guys have anything else that you want to put out there before we wrap up and sign off? Thank you guys both for coming on.
You bet. Thomas, it's super nice to meet you. One other crazy idea I've had for a long time is to use Helium as a downlink for GPS corrections. It's not really appropriate for uplink because there's too much data, but you could probably do it to downlink corrections like the L-band. So if that's ever something of interest, we should chat about that. I love the idea of catalytic converter tracker. I've had, that's a real problem. People stealing catalytic converters. That would be great to bust up some of those gangs that do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you guys. Nick, we used to do tracking for equipment that we sent down hole after we'd drill a well. And it ended up being all RFID based because of the temperatures and the pressures. But if anybody can ever figure out the solution to the high temperature situation, the market's limitless. That'd be a great one there. But we used RFIDs, which you know how that works. Low range. you
Yeah.
know.
Interesting. I mean, a knock on wood. I've never had a catalytic converter stolen, and now I've got a little e-golf. I don't think they have those.
You will.
Hell yeah, give it time, man.
That's
Yeah,
common.
I've got my little '04 Tacoma. Maybe that thing's got one on it, and it'll go missing. So
There you
see.
go.
But ripping. Thanks a ton, guys, for coming on. Super good show. I love the fact that we got to talk about stuff outside of Helium. There should be a bunch of links in the show description. If you have any questions about it, if you've been watching this, you're always welcome to join the Gristle King Discord server. If you got questions for me or the Geonet server, or just hit up Thomas at LoneStarTracking.com. All the links should be in the description. That should be the show. Thanks, folks. We will see you guys next week. Rock and roll.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks. Bye-bye.